Hey guys, it's Matt here, and in this video, we're going to be comparing the iPad 1 versus the 2, but with a little bit of a twist. The iPad 2 is running iOS 9, the iPad 1 is running iOS 7. Which one will be faster? So, for a bit of context, iOS 7 on the iPad 1 is not a supported operating system. The last OS that ran on the iPad 1 was iOS 5. The iPad 2, which is sitting over here, this guy, the last supported OS, is iOS 9, and that's the last OS that these will ever run because of their A5 chip. However, iOS 9 should not have run on the iPad 2 for a lot of reasons. It shouldn't have run on a lot of A5 devices. The iPad 2 runs iOS 9 horribly, and it's also one of the worst devices to run iOS 9 on because it's missing so many features compared to other devices with iOS 9. I mean, this iPad 2 doesn't even have Siri, whereas every other device that ran iOS 9 did have Siri. So we're going to do a few little tests on these devices, and we're going to be keeping track of the score between the iPad 1 and the 2. So each task that the iPad 1 can do faster, it will receive a point. Every task that the iPad 2 can do, it will also receive a point, and you will see the scoreboard on the bottom of the video. So the first task is arguably one of the most important ones, and that is boot up times. So we're gonna get this going here. 3, 2, 1, go. So I pressed both buttons at the same time. The iPad 2 lit up a little bit later. It's also not wanting to stay up. Now the iPad 1 has the old design for the Apple logo. That's just the firmware. That will change to the iOS 7 bigger logo that this iPad has once it actually gets past its initial boot up phase. Okay, can't say I was expecting that. The iPad 2 beat the iPad 1, but not by that much, actually. I'm a little surprised by that. I was kind of expecting the iPad 2 to have issues versus the iPad 1. Storage almost full. Shut up, it's because I have the device jailbroken, so it's confused. These iPads have different versions of the iOS apps on them. The iPad 1 has, obviously, iOS 7, and the iPad 2 is running iOS 9. Oddly enough, the iPad 1 did actually get there faster when it came to mail fetch. The iPad 2 just did it. So we're going to open one app at a time. There are going to be some apps I'm going to skip. For instance, the camera app and the photo booth app, because the iPad 1 does not have a camera, so there's nothing to really compare that against. Everything that's on these iPads are the same. I have the same games on each iPad, and I tried to match their versions together. Some of them aren't exactly the same. I love how this is asking for iCloud. Guarantee that's not going to be the end of it. Knew it. Okay, what is this?
Okay.
So the first app that we're going to try is we're actually not going to try FaceTime because there's no camera, and there might be some initialization issues with that app. I don't think that's a fair test. We're going to open Calendar. So 3, 2, 1. So the iPad 2 beat the iPad 1, not by much, just a little bit, but it did. We're going to open the Photos app. There shouldn't be anything on either of these. There might be a screenshot or two on this one. 3, 2, 1, go. This one got like the tiniest of a head start, but just like a quarter second. But even then, there still was no match. We're going to skip the camera app because there isn't one on this device. Contacts we're going to skip because there's a lot of personal information in there. I'm not going to open that. We're going to open the Clock app next. 3, 2, 1, go. That wasn't even close. iPad 2 hands down beat the iPad 1. We're going to skip the Maps app because the iOS 7 version does not work anymore. And 9's also works, but I also don't need myself to dox my own location, so we're not going to do that. We're going to open Videos. There should be, I don't think there's anything on either of these, so this should be a pretty fair test. 3, 2, 1, and go. All right. It just loaded some stuff from iCloud, both of them did, and the iPad 2 beat the 1, not by very long, but it did. All right, we're gonna skip Photo Booth because there is no Photo Booth app on the iPad 1. We're gonna open Notes. 3, 2, 1. So the iPad 1 is losing by less than a second or so each time. It's pretty marginal. Unfortunately, it is still losing. We're gonna open up the Reminders app. 3, 2, 1. And that took a moment. There we go. So that opened up, and yeah, the iPad 1 didn't win that one either. The apps actually look about the same. I didn't realize that iOS 7 through 9 didn't change the app that much. So we're going to skip the Game Center app because, well, it does exist on iOS 9. iOS 7's version does not work anymore, whereas iOS 9's does. So it's not exactly a fair test. We're going to skip the Newsstand app as well because that app no longer exists on iOS 9. That was taken out in 8. We're going to open the App Store. 3, 2, 1. I tapped those at the same time. The iPad 1 responded to it faster. And the iPad 1 beat it. Just barely, but it did. This is our first point to the iPad 1. That doesn't bode well, because I think the iPad 2 is like way ahead. We're gonna open up Settings. 3, 2, 1. That took a really long time to do the animation on iOS 9. And the iPad 1 beat the iPad 2 by a lot, wow. So that's pretty cool. So the iPad 1 just scored another point. The Music app has the same stuff between both devices. I have turned Apple Music off on this one. 3, 2, 1. This is not open. It looks open. This always holds the previous thumbnail, so just ignore that. And this came up pretty much immediately. This one actually didn't take very long, though. To its credit, the iPad 1's Music app is way heavier than the iPad 2's. This was back when Apple still had all of the categories across the bottom. In my opinion, that's a better design, but I mean, what can you really do? Whereas the iPad 2, they moved it all into this like sidebar view. There's like some other ways to get into that stuff, but it's just not. In my opinion, I think the old app is just simply better, but we're gonna open up Safari. I actually don't know what these are gonna open up to, so I'm gonna close out of these apps. I'm gonna get them to open Google. The iPad 1 had 3 tabs open, and the iPad 2 had like nothing open because I just reset this iPad. So now that these will both open up to Google, so long as the homepage stays the same, we should be good. So 3, 2, 1. I accidentally opened this one a little bit faster, so I'm gonna cut that out of the time. That's about a tie. I'm gonna retry that since I opened this one up a little bit quicker. I'm gonna just have to call that a tie. This one opened it a little bit faster, but this iPad here opened it faster on my other attempts, and I think I might have tapped this one a little bit quicker than this one. I'm gonna call this one a tie. I'm just gonna say both of these get a point. So the other apps that I have will expose personal information. I do actually use these, surprise, surprise. So we're gonna start opening up some third-party apps, see the responsiveness between the two devices, and just kind of see from there, and they'll score, wow, that's a tongue twister. And they'll score points accordingly in terms of their third-party apps. A lot of these are gonna be games, so that's what we're gonna kind of base this off of. So we're gonna open up, first of all, we're gonna open up Cydia, since that's the app that both of these have for jailbreaking. So 3, 2, 1. So the iPad 2 beat it, hands down. By a lot. It looks like they're both going to be doing a bit of data reloading for some reason. Okay, the iPad 1 had a lot more errors. That's because I've had to install a few more tweaks on the iPad 1 to make some things work. But it seems like the iPad 2 loaded things quite a bit faster than the 1. I am not surprised by that, so that's another point for the iPad 2. So these are the games that I have on both iPads. It's the same loadout. A lot of these are just games I used to play when I was a kid. Some of these are very obscure and weird. Some of these are more common, and we're gonna start off with some of the more common games that I used to play as a kid. And we're gonna start with Temple Run. Surprising no one, the iPad 2 opened that up pretty much instantaneously. Now this is actually a very fair test because the version that's on both of these iPads are identical. So this one's not newer than the other one. They're both the same exact version. So, but you can see here, the iPad 2, when I go to play this, is very responsive, very playable. It says swipe to turn, so let's just do that. This one's already past the tutorial, but we're not really looking for like immediate first stop. We're looking at frame rate. We're looking at just the way that this all works. And this seems very smooth. I'm having no issues playing this. So yeah, I would say that this iPad handles it pretty darn well. I'm going to wait until we get to some coins. I don't know why I did that. I'm going to wait until we get to some coins just so then we have a few more objects on screen. Just to make this a little bit fair. I'm not picking up the iPad, so everyone can get mad at me, or I'll just do that. All right, now we've got the iPad 1. In terms of the way that the games play and the way that the games feel, I would say that this is probably a tie. This iPad launched first, but I'm willing to give both of these iPads points for, gee whiz, I'm willing to give both of these iPads points for their smoothness. These are both running at the exact same frame rate. I'm pretty sure this game is capped to 60, but that seems to work just fine. That animation is really laggy. Now, a game I have not tried on either of these iPads is Temple Run 2. I fully expect it to work just fine on the iPad 2. I have no idea how it's gonna run on the iPad 1. So we're gonna try this. 3, 2, 1. The iPad 1 did show the launch screen a bit faster. This is also the same version. I copied over both. They're both the same exact version, so. That lag on the iPad 2 is freaking slow. But the performance, we will have to see. Man, oh man, that iPad 1's really struggling. And that is a game crash. I don't know if this iPad's actually going to be able to launch this game, but we're going to give it another shot. So I'm going to have to give the W to the iPad 2. The iPad 1 straight up did not load this app. This is one of the few apps I did not test before actually running this. The games that are on the iPad 1 are ones that will actually launch, but it seems like Temple Run 2 is not one of those games. I'm kind of surprised by that, given how old it is. But the iPad 2 runs it. I guarantee that if I were to hit play on this, it's going to run just fine. Yeah, it looks to be running perfectly with no issues there. I'm amazed that that actually counted, but it seems to be running perfectly fine. No issues, no frame rate skips. I'm just gonna let you fall off and die. No issues there. So we're gonna try a couple more apps just to see which ones work. I'm not gonna be trying every one of these because it seems like the fate of the iPad 1 is pretty sealed at this point, but I will give it a little bit of a shot. An app that I used to play as a kid called The Blockheads is actually a game that does work on both of these iPads. We're just gonna have to experiment, see how these run. 3, 2, 1. The iPad 1 did not win. The iPad 2 did on that one again. So when it comes to performance, I'm just gonna hit OK on this. So scrolling around here, very smooth, very responsive. I can tap around and the game handles things very well. You can see here, the character's moving just fine. Whereas on the iPad 1, let's give this a shot. And I've played this on here, so I know how this is gonna perform. It's all right. This is actually better than I expected it was gonna be. It's probably moving the camera at about 10 FPS. This is moving at a very solid like 20, 30. The game does not run at 60 FPS. The game runs on the iPad 2. This kind of moves around at about 30. That is not a fault of the iPad 2. That is how the game runs. It runs it that way even on my iPad Pros and stuff. So that's just the way the gamer handles. This does not run very well. Totally playable. The Blockheads is not a game where you need a very high frame rate on. But if I tap down here to get the character to move there, it is not very responsive. If I tap over here, you can see just how much more smooth this experience is versus on the iPad 1. Fully playable on the iPad 1, I will say that, just to give this iPad credit. But is this winning? No, this one gets the point for performance on the blockheads. So let's try Mega Jump. 3, 2, 1. Oh, it's not even close. Oh gosh. What is happening on the iPad 2 with the characters just sliding along? They both are doing it. I guess that's just the way that the iPads are angled. I guess it's like slight enough to where it's causing a little bit of issues. Now, how does the games perform? I'm not going to let this... I'm amazed. Okay, what is happening? The games are just playing themselves. This is a perfect demo for... There we go. I'm like, this is a perfect demo for a video. Both run it just fine, so I'm going to give both of them a point in terms of the app performance. Now, Coin Kingdom is a game that I used to play as a kid. Now, this game is actually very intensive. It's got a lot going on. There's a lot of motion. A lot of things happen at once. 3, 2, 1. Oh. All right, attempt number 2, now that the game is actually working. 3, 2, 1. And the iPad 1 loads the game faster. And this has more going on too. So the iPad 1 gets the point. It's pretty close, but off camera, I was trying to get this to load, and this one loaded faster, quite a bit faster than this one did. The only reason why this doesn't surprise me is that this is an iOS 4 game. iOS 4.3 is what this requires. So my guess is that's simply because iOS 7 has less OS overhead. This game, I'm guessing, only uses probably 64 megs of RAM. The less overhead of iOS is simply enough to make this game launch a little bit better. Now, in terms of performance, yes, this is a coin pressure game. I used to play this all the time as a kid. I still install it on my devices just for fun. But you can see here, both of these games, I would say, are running at about the same. This is running perfectly fine. This one is running, I would say, about the same. I can't tell if there's any stuttering on that or not. Okay, it is a little bit laggy. Just a little bit, not by a lot, but it is just a little bit, especially when, ooh, yeah, there was a hitch there. And somehow I actually win something big. when I'm on camera, then I win somehow. Yeah, sure, that makes a whole lot of sense. All right. The iPad 2, iPad 1, this gets the point for performance. This launched it faster, and off camera, this also launched it faster still. So I'm actually going to say that this is a tie, and that's because as you play the game, the performance smoothens out a lot, and it becomes to the point where it's almost completely unnoticeable, to the point where I would say it's margin of error. So both get a point here. So we're going to try 2 more games, and we're going to try 2 pretty simple games, just because I'm certain that these are very similar, if not the same version of the app. So we're going to try Cookie Clicker. So this runs way better on this one. And the reason why I'm trying games like this is A, these are the ones I have, but B, these are relatively simple games. We're gonna try 2048. It's a pretty simple game. I don't see either of these iPads having problems with it. That took a very long time for it to load on that. Oh! The iPad 1 beat it. Oh, wait, what? Excuse me, what? I think I found a game that runs on the iPad 1 that won on the 2. And not only that, this runs really well. I can't say I was expecting that. So that means the iPad 1 gets both points. The iPad 1 not only runs the game pretty well, it actually opens the game. Okay, that is funny and surprising to me. Okay, it's only fair. The iPad 2 got the 2 points from Temple Run 2, so Now the final game I'm gonna try, and I wasn't actually gonna do this, but I'm sure everyone's gonna want it, is Minecraft. Now, the versions that run on 7 and 9 are extremely different, so what I did was I put the iOS 6 version on both of these, so that's gonna be the exact same version. 3, 2, 1. We are actually going to try that again, because I don't think I opened those at the same time. Actually, I don't think it mattered. This opened it way faster than this one did. So I opened this one a little bit early, but it didn't matter. This beat it by a landslide. I'm gonna create a world on both of these. This one already has a world, but that doesn't matter. So I'm gonna create a new world. I'm gonna do advanced, and we're gonna set the same exact seed as well. Oh, I cannot select infinite. Okay, well, in order for it to be fair, we're gonna do old on both. You can change this to infinite later. I forgot. The iPad 1 does not support infinite worlds. Interesting that it can pick that up given the custom OS, but it seems to be able to. We're gonna set a seed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one to make sure that these are the exact same world. So let's create it. This beat that pretty much easy, like hands down, no problems there. I'm gonna wait to actually do anything until this world actually loads up too. I think it looks like I set them both to creative, so oops. So let's see performance. So I can run around here. This is running at a very smooth 60 FPS. I'm not having any lag at all. Perfectly playable. No issues here. This actually, man, this version is very nostalgic for me. I forgot just how different this version of Minecraft was back then. Totally forgot, but yeah, so this is 1.14 or 0.14, my bad, on this iPad. So now we gotta try the iPad 1. We gotta see how this performs. Okay, all right. So this runs, I mean, okay, this isn't running horribly, but it's not running great either. I mean, I can't say I'm terribly surprised by that. This is very old hardware running these games, so I am not surprised that this is kind of slow. But it does seem to be working. I really want to give the iPad 1 points just for actually working. What the heck is happening over here? Well, the iPad 2 gets that point. It runs the game really well. Actually, I'm very curious now. Does it do the same thing on this one? I guess it's just a quirk either of this seed or of this old Minecraft version. Finally, we're going to test out one more third-party app. Wow, that iPad 1 is really struggling to exit that. We're going to try one more third-party app, and that is Autodesk Sketchbook. There is a version for both of these iPads. This is the iOS 9 version. This is the iOS 7 version. They're almost exactly the same. So we're going to open these guys up, and this will be the final point for the video. 3, 2, 1, and go. Okay, yeah, there we go. Absolutely, hands down, iPad 2 beat the iPad 1. Please go away. So the final tally, here are the scores once more. The iPad 2 totally slaughtered the iPad 1. It wasn't even close. Am I surprised by these results? There are a couple that I am surprised by, but also this goes to show why iOS 7 never made it to the iPad 1. Even though iOS 9 was a dog on the iPad 2, this is why we never saw it on the iPad 1. Now, I still think iOS 7 on the original iPad is freaking cool, and I deal with the slowness all the time when I'm using it, but ultimately, this is why we didn't see iOS 7 on this iPad. I think iOS 6 would have been a better choice, and obviously iOS 7 is not optimized on the iPad 1. This was more so of a fun video. It's not exactly a video that's designed to be super fair, although I did make sure to be as fair as possible when doing these tests, making sure that I opened up apps that were the same across both devices. The music on both iPads are the same. I have the exact same apps and the exact same version of those apps if possible, but the iPad 2 still came out on top. So let's be honest here. The fact that the iPad 2 won is not terribly surprising, but I will say that the iPad 2 did not win as far ahead as I thought it would. The iPad 2 has the A5 processor, which is a dual-core chip. The iPad 1 has an A4 processor, which is a single-core chip The fact that the iPad 2 won, but only barely in a lot of situations, it just goes to show how bogged down and slow iOS 9 actually is, considering the fact that iOS 7 on the iPad 1 isn't that bad. It's not great, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So if anything, this just goes to show how slow the iPad 2 is, not really so much how slow the iPad 1 would be, because this was never a supported operating system. So if this iPad 2 was running iOS 8, this would be a much different story. And I think that this iPad would have actually beaten this one in every test. I don't think it would have even come close. I wouldn't be surprised if the iPad 1 had scored 0 points. But the fact that the iPad 1 got anything at all just goes to show how unoptimized iOS 9 is. But also, just because I think this is a really cool project. iOS 7 being on the first gen iPad is not something that ever should have been possible, but it is, and not only that, it doesn't run that badly in comparison to what we've already dealt with the iPad 2. But without further ado, the winner of today's challenge is unsurprisingly the iPad 2, but that just makes sense. I think the real winner here is the fact that the iPad 1 was able to keep up so well with the 2 in a lot of instances. So, with that being said, that's about it for this video. I love seeing the comments that you guys had on the last video, so feel free to leave some more on this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.